Life has a way of taking everything you love, then showing you what truly matters. In the sprawling plains of Montana, Evelyn McRae faces an impossible choice. 8 months pregnant and newly widowed after a tragic rodeo accident claimed her. Husband's life, she's about to lose the family ranch to foreclosure. With winter approaching and desperate times calling for desperate measures, she posts an ad for ranch help. Enter Jesse Cole, a quiet drifter with calloused hands and haunted eyes, seeking his own shot at redemption. What starts as a simple job offer slowly transforms into something neither of them expected to find again: hope. But when Jesse's past catches up with him, will Evelyn risk her heart one more time for a man who might disappear like morning mist over the mountains? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Dust motes danced in the late afternoon sunlight, streaming through the church's stained glass windows, casting colored shadows across Jack McRae's rodeo trophy. Evelyn's trembling fingers traced the golden bronc rider on top, remembering how proud he'd been just 3 weeks ago when he'd won it. Now it sat beside his casket, a bitter reminder of their last perfect day together. "Mrs. McRae?" Pastor Mitchell's gentle voice pulled her from the memory. "The guests are starting to arrive." She nodded, smoothing her black dress over her swollen belly. 8 months pregnant, and already a widow at 38. The baby kicked, as if sensing her distress, and she pressed her hand against the spot. "We're okay, little one," she whispered, though the words felt hollow. The church filled quickly with the familiar faces of Montana ranch country, weathered cowboys in their Sunday best, wives with casseroles and sympathy, all of them stealing. Glances at her belly, then quickly looking away. Their pity was almost worse than their silence. Sheriff Cooper approached first, hat in his hands. "Jack was the best bronc rider this county ever saw, Evelyn. What happened? It was just one of those things. Horse spooked at the wrong moment. Nobody could have seen it coming, but she had seen it coming. Had begged Jack to stop competing, to focus on the ranch and their coming baby. The prize money's good," he'd said, with that crooked smile that always melted her resolve. "And sweetheart, you know I can't quit while I'm ahead." Ahead, the word echoed mockingly as she thought of the stack of bills in her desk drawer. The ranch had been struggling even before Jack's death. Now, Dr. Sarah Bennett, her obstetrician, touched her elbow. "You should sit down, Evelyn. Your blood pressure—" "I'm fine." The words came out sharper than intended. She softened her tone. "Really, Sarah, I need to stand, need to—" To what? To pretend she was stronger than she felt. To show these people she could handle this? The service passed in a blur of hymns and eulogies. She barely registered Pastor Mitchell's words about Jack's vibrant spirit and dedication to family. All she could focus on was that empty chair beside her, the space where her husband should be sitting, his warm hand holding hers. Later, as the sun set behind the crazy mountains, she stood alone at the freshly covered grave. The trophy sat at the base of the headstone, its golden finish dulled by the evening shadows. 8 years of marriage, a baby on the way, and a ranch that had been in Jack's family for 3 generations. Their whole life together reduced to a granite marker. "And a piece of metal. I don't know how to do this without you," she whispered, touching the cold stone. The baby kicked again, harder this time, and she wrapped her arms around herself, trying to hold together all the pieces that felt like they were flying apart. The sound of footsteps on grass made her turn. Sarah stood a respectful distance away, concern etched on her face. "You can't stay out here all night, Evelyn. It's not good for you or the baby." Just a few more minutes. But she knew Sarah was right. She had to go home, had to face the empty ranch house, the unfinished nursery Jack had been painting, the countless decisions that now rested solely on her shoulders. Most pressing was the meeting with the bank tomorrow, a meeting Jack had scheduled, hoping to refinance their mounting debt. With one last look at the grave, she turned away. The trophy caught the last rays of sunlight, throwing a golden glare that seemed to follow her, like Jack's dreams refusing to let her go. The stack of past-due bills on Evelyn's desk seemed to grow taller with each passing day. Red stamps and final notices blurred before her eyes as she tried to make sense of the numbers. Even the electric company's threatening letter seemed less daunting than the bank statement showing their account hovering near zero. Mrs. McRae, Margaret Chen, the loan officer at First Montana Bank, peered at her over wire-rimmed glasses. "I understand this is a difficult time, but we need to discuss the reality of your situation." Evelyn straightened in her chair, grateful for the wall behind her. The same wall where photos of previous bank presidents hung, stern-faced men who'd probably sat across from other desperate ranchers over the years. "I just need an extension on the mortgage. 3 months, maybe 4. Once the baby comes, your expenses will increase." Margaret's voice was gentle but firm. "The ranch's income barely covered the payments when your husband was—" She hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "When there were 2 of you managing things." The unspoken truth hung heavy in the air. Even before Jack's death, they'd been barely staying afloat. His rodeo winnings had helped patch the holes, but now, "I can work harder." "Hire some help." Evelyn stopped, realizing how that sounded. Hire help when she couldn't even make the mortgage. Margaret slid a folder across the desk. "These are some options for selling. There's a developer, Westland Properties, who's been buying up ranches in the area. They're offering fair market value, sometimes above. You could walk away with enough to start fresh somewhere else." Start fresh. The words tasted like ash in her mouth. "This ranch has been in Jack's family for 3 generations, our baby." She pressed a hand to her belly, feeling the familiar flutter of movement. "This is their inheritance. Their inheritance could be a debt-free start," Margaret countered. "Think about it, Evelyn. Single motherhood is hard enough without— I need to use the restroom." Evelyn pushed herself up, pregnancy making the movement awkward. She caught a glimpse of herself in the window's reflection. Pale face, dark circles under her eyes, hair hastily pulled back. When had she started? Looking so worn. In the bathroom, she splashed cold water on her face and stared at herself in the mirror. "Think, Evelyn," she whispered. The ranch needed at least 1 more full-time worker to be profitable, someone who knew horses, cattle, and the rhythm of ranch life. Someone who wouldn't mind long hours and delayed paychecks. Someone desperate, enough to take a chance on a failing ranch and a pregnant widow. Back home that evening, she booted up the ancient desktop computer in Jack's office. The dial-up internet connection whined and crackled, each second of waiting feeding her doubt. But what choice did she have? The cursor blinked on the empty screen of the local newspaper's website. Under "Help Wanted," she began to type "Experienced." Ranch hand needed, room and board provided. Must be self-motivated, skilled with horses and cattle. References required, salary negotiable. She paused, then added, "Immediate start necessary." Her finger hovered over the submit button. The baby kicked hard enough to make her grunt. "You agree, little one?" she murmured. "Because once I post this, there's no going back." Through the window she could see the sun setting behind the barn. Jack had repainted last spring. The fences needed mending, the north pasture needed rotating, and the hay would need cutting soon. All things Jack had handled, making it look effortless. The bills on her desk caught her eye, their red warnings like accusations. 3 months behind on the mortgage, 6 weeks until her due date, and winter coming, bringing its own set of expensive challenges. She clicked submit before she could change her mind. That night, sleep proved elusive. She lay in bed listening to the wind whistling through the ranch house's old bones, imagining footsteps in the hallway that weren't there. "I'm doing the right thing," she told the darkness. But in the back of her mind, a voice that sounded suspiciously like her mother's whispered, "A strange man on the property, with you in your condition. Have you lost your mind?" Maybe she had. But as she finally drifted off, one thought remained clear. Sometimes the biggest risks came from not taking any risks at all. The stranger's truck crawled up the gravel driveway like an old dog finding its way home, tired but determined. Evelyn watched from behind the kitchen curtain, one hand resting on the shotgun Jack had always kept by the door. The classified ad had run for 3 days, drawing mostly calls from teenagers looking for summer work or retired men who knew a thing or two about horses. This was the first applicant who looked like he might actually know which end of a horse was which. The truck stopped, dust settling around its weathered blue paint. The man who stepped out moved with the easy grace of someone used to physical work. Tall, lean-muscled, wearing clean but well-worn clothes, and perched on his head, a Stetson hat that had seen more than its share of sun and rain. He stood for a moment, taking in the ranch with careful eyes. His gaze swept over the faded red barn, the corrals needing repair, the fields stretching toward the mountains. When he turned toward the house, Evelyn let the curtain fall back into place. The knock, when it came, was firm but not demanding. She opened the door just wide enough to be polite, keeping one hand on the frame. "Can I help you?" "Yes, ma'am." His voice was quiet, touched with a slight southern drawl. "Name's Jesse Cole. I'm here about the ranch hand position." He removed his hat, revealing dark hair streaked with early gray at the temples. His face was weathered, but his eyes were clear and steady. "Hope I'm not too early." "No, you're fine." She studied him, trying to see past her own anxiety. He looked to be in his early 40s, with crow's feet at the corners of his eyes that deepened when he offered a slight smile. "You have experience?" "Yes, ma'am. Worked ranches in Texas, Wyoming, Montana. Been doing it most of my life." "References?" He reached slowly into his back pocket, careful, she noticed, to telegraph his movements, and pulled out a folded paper. "Got 3 here. Most recent is from the Davidson spread over in Livingston." She knew the Davidsons, good people, careful about who they hired. "Why'd you leave?" A shadow crossed his face. "Ranch sold. New owners brought in their own crew." Evelyn nodded, understanding all too well how quickly things could change. "Mind if I call them?" "Not at all." He stood patiently while she read through the references, noting the dates. There were gaps in his employment history, but the letters themselves were strong. Each mentioned his way with horses, his reliability, his quiet competence. "Would you like to see the place?" She heard herself asking. They walked the property, Jesse matching his stride to her pregnant pace. He asked good questions about the cattle count, the irrigation system, the hay equipment. His eyes missed nothing. The loose boards on the corral, the aging tractor, the signs of deferred maintenance that had been mounting since Jack's death. At the barn, a commotion broke out in one of the stalls. Sugar, their most valuable mare, was in one of her moods, kicking at the walls and rolling her eyes. "She's been like this since," Evelyn swallowed. "She was my husband's horse." Jesse studied the mare, then moved slowly toward the stall. Sugar's ears flattened, but he kept his approach steady, speaking in a low murmur. To Evelyn's amazement, the mare's head lowered, her nervous dancing calming to an occasional shuffle. "She's grieving too," Jesse said quietly, letting Sugar lip at his palm. "Horses feel loss same as people, they just show it different." Something in the way he said it, the gentle understanding in his voice, made Evelyn's throat tight. She turned away, blinking hard. "The job includes room and board," she said briskly. "Small cabin behind the barn. Previous hand lived there 15 years, so it's solid enough. Pays not much, especially at first." He nodded, still stroking Sugar's nose. "Not looking to get rich, ma'am. Just looking for honest work and a quiet place to do it." Evelyn watched as Sugar, who hadn't let anyone but Jack handle her for weeks, leaned into Jesse's touch. Part of her knew she should call more references, should ask more questions. But there was something about him, a steadiness, a sense of someone who understood loss and respect in equal measure. "When can you start?" He settled his hat back on his head, and for a moment, caught in the barn's dusty light, he looked almost like a figure from one of the old Western paintings in her father's study. "Right now, if you need me to," looking at the gentle way he handled Sugar, at the quiet competence in his movements, Evelyn made her decision. Sometimes she was learning you had to trust your instincts. And right now, her instincts were telling her that Jesse Cole might be exactly what the ranch needed, whether he was what she needed. Well, that was a question she wasn't ready to ask. The old ranch ledger sat open on the kitchen table, its pages filled with Jack's bold handwriting. Evelyn traced the familiar loops and slashes, adding her own neat columns alongside them. 1 week since Jesse Cole had arrived, and already the numbers were telling a different story. "Fixed the north fence line today," Jesse said from the doorway. "Boots carefully wiped clean. Found some loose wire by the creek too. Patched it before any cattle could find their way through." She nodded, adding it to her growing list of completed repairs. "The feed store called. Said their prices are going up next month. Might be worth looking into that hay cooperative over in Belgrade." He moved to the sink, washing his hands with the efficiency of long habit. "Could save 30–40% if we buy in bulk with other ranches." The suggestion was practical, respectful of her authority, while offering a solution she hadn't considered. Like everything else he'd done this week, it walked the fine line between helpful and presumptuous. She studied the ledger again. Feed costs had been bleeding them dry, but if they could reduce that expense— "I'll make some calls tomorrow," Jesse nodded, turning to leave. He never lingered, never imposed. Even his presence in the house was rare, just their daily evening. Check-ins, brief and professional. "Would you like some coffee?" The words surprised her as much as him. "I mean, if you're done for the day, you should know the plans for tomorrow." A flicker of something. Gratitude? Heh, crossed his face. "Yes, ma'am. Coffee would be nice." While the percolator burbled, Evelyn found herself studying him covertly. His clothes were clean but threadbare, the kind worn by someone who spent money on necessities first. The Stetson sat on the bench by the door, as much a part of him as his quiet manner. "Sugar's coming along," he said, accepting the cup she offered. "Got her wearing a saddle today. No fuss. She hasn't let anyone near her with a saddle since—" Evelyn sat carefully, adjusting her position to accommodate her growing belly. "Jack always said she was too smart for her own good." "Horses are better than people at reading hearts," Jesse said, then seemed to catch himself. "Least that's what my granddad used to say." The mention of family, the first personal detail he'd offered, hung in the air between them. Evelyn found herself wanting to ask more, but something in his expression suggested the door had already closed. Instead, she turned the ledger toward him. "I've been thinking about rotating the herd to the south pasture early this year. The grass is better there, and with feed prices rising." They spent the next hour planning, their coffee growing cold as they discussed irrigation schedules and equipment repairs. Jesse's suggestions were informed by years of experience, but he offered them tentatively, always deferring to her decisions. When he finally stood to leave, the kitchen felt different somehow. Not less empty exactly, but more settled, like the house itself was adjusting to new rhythms. "Oh," he said at the door, meant to mention. "That mare in the back pasture, the red roan, she's looking close. Might want to move her to the foaling. Barn soon." Evelyn's hand went automatically to her own swollen belly. "I'll check on her in the morning." Already moved her. He settled his hat on his head. "Hope that's all right." She seemed restless, and with the coyotes we've been hearing, the thoughtfulness of it, not just doing the work but anticipating needs, made her throat tight. "Thank you, Mr. Cole." "Jesse," he said quietly. "Mr. Cole was my father." She nodded, not quite ready to offer the same familiarity in return. "Good night, Jesse." After he left, she stood at the window watching. His figure moved through the gathering dusk toward the cabin. The evening light caught his hat, turning it into a silhouette that could have belonged to any of the cowboys who'd worked this land over the generations. But he wasn't just any cowboy. There was something in the way he moved, the way he spoke, that suggested depths beneath his quiet exterior. Something that made her both curious and cautious, looking down at the ledger, at the neat columns of numbers that were finally beginning to make sense again. Evelyn allowed herself a small smile. 1 week, and already the ranch felt more manageable, more hopeful, The baby kicked, a strong movement that made her laugh softly. "Yes, little one," she whispered. "I think we made the right choice." But as she closed the ledger and prepared for bed, she couldn't help wondering what other changes this quiet man with the weathered hat might bring to their lives. The photograph slipped from Jesse's wallet as he paid for his coffee at the general store, floating to the floor like an autumn leaf. Evelyn, waiting by the register with an armload of prenatal vitamins and ranch supplies, caught a glimpse before he quickly retrieved it. A dark-haired woman holding a little girl, both smiling at the camera, the edges of the image worn soft. With handling, she pretended not to notice how carefully he tucked it away, or the way his hands trembled slightly as he did so. Some secrets deserved their privacy. But later that evening, when she found him on the porch after dinner, staring at the same photograph in the fading light, she couldn't stop herself from asking, "Family?" He startled, nearly dropping the picture. For a moment she thought he might walk away. Instead, he shifted over on the step, making room for her to sit. "Were," he said finally. "My wife Claire and our daughter Hannah." His thumb brushed over their faces with a gentleness that made Evelyn's heart ache. "Car accident 8 years ago." The words hung in the cooling evening air. Somewhere in the distance, a meadowlark called its evening song. "I'm sorry," she said, knowing how inadequate the words were. Were you with them?" "No." His voice roughened. Was running late from work. They were heading to Hannah's dance recital. Semi-driver fell asleep at the wheel. He folded the photograph with practiced care. She was 6. Would have been 14 now. Evelyn rested her hand on her belly, feeling the baby's familiar movements. "Does it ever stop hurting?" "Changes," he said after a long moment. "Like a broken bone that heals crooked. Still works, but you never forget it's there." He glanced at her. "Different from your loss, I expect. Fresher. Grief is grief." She surprised herself with the steadiness in her voice. "Jack used to say there's no point measuring sadness. It is what it is." Jessie nodded, seeming to find comfort in her matter-of-fact tone. "Smart man. Too smart to die in a rodeo accident." The bitterness in her voice caught them both off guard. "Sorry, I don't apologize for feeling what you feel." He shifted, wincing slightly, and she noticed for the first time the way he favored his left side. "Old injury?" "Yeah." His hand went unconsciously to his ribs. "Rodeo. Bull riding. Why I quit the circuit 15 years back." The coincidence startled a laugh from her. A retired rodeo cowboy. Jack would have loved that. He never did learn when to quit. Most of us don't. Jessie's smile was gentle. "It gets in your blood. The rush, the pride, the feeling that next time you'll do better, ride longer, win bigger, until you don't." She hadn't meant to sound so harsh, but Jessie just nodded. "Until you don't," he agreed. "Sometimes we're lucky enough to walk away. Sometimes—" He trailed off, letting the thought finish itself. They sat in companionable silence as the sun slipped behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. The evening air carried the sweet scent of alfalfa from the nearby fields. "Hannah loved sunsets," Jessie said softly. "Used to make up stories about the colors. Said the pink was cotton candy and the gold was fairy dust." His voice held no bitterness, only a deep, abiding love. "Jack used to tell the most ridiculous bedtime stories." The memory brought an unexpected smile. "Had this whole series about a clumsy ranch dog who kept accidentally saving the day. I've been wondering lately, hoping our little one might inherit his gift for storytelling." "They inherit the best parts of us," Jessie said, "even the parts we didn't know were there." A comfortable quiet settled between them, broken only by the distant lowing of cattle and the creak of the porch swing in the evening breeze. For the first time since Jack's death, Evelyn felt the knot in her chest loosen slightly. Not gone, but different, like Jessie had said. A broken bone healing crooked. When the first stars began to appear, Jessie stood carefully, offering her a hand up. "Better get those evening checks done." She accepted his help, noting the calluses on his palm, the careful strength in his grip. "Jessie," He paused, hat already settled back on his head. "Thank you for sharing them with me." He touched the brim of his hat, a gesture that somehow managed to convey both acknowledgement and respect. "Thank you for listening, Mrs. McRae. Evelyn," she said softly. "My friends call me Evelyn." His smile, brief but warm, told her he understood the gift she was offering. Not forgiveness. There was nothing to forgive. But perhaps understanding, a recognition of shared pain, shared healing. As she watched him walk toward the barn, his figure silvered by starlight, Evelyn realized something had shifted between them. Not dramatically, not romantically, but fundamentally. They were no longer just employer and employee, widow and hired hand. They were two people who knew the weight of love and loss and carrying on anyway. The storm rolled in just before sunset, turning the spring sky an ominous green-black. Evelyn stood at the kitchen window, watching lightning dance across the mountains. The weather radio crackled with warnings: severe thunderstorm, possible tornado conditions, flash flood alert for low-lying areas. The phone rang, making her jump. "McRae Ranch!" "Evelyn." Jesse's voice competed with the growing wind. "North pasture. Fences down. Lightning strike. Cattle are spooked, heading for the creek." Her heart clenched. The creek, already swollen with spring runoff, would be rising fast. "How many head?" 20, maybe 30. "I can't." Static cut through his words. "Need help." She was already pulling on Jack's old rain slicker. "I'm coming." "Mrs. McRae." "Evelyn, you can't. Your condition." "Those cattle are all we have." She wedged the phone between ear and shoulder, struggling with her boots. "I know that land better than anyone. I'm coming." The line went dead as another thunder crack shook the house. Outside, the rain had started in earnest, heavy drops that stung like bullets. Evelyn hurried to the barn, where Sugar paced nervously in her stall. For a moment she hesitated. 8 months pregnant, in a storm, on a horse that had been unpredictable since Jack's death. Every sensible part of her screamed that this was foolish. But Sugar met her eyes with unexpected calm, as if sensing the urgency. The mare stood steady while Evelyn saddled her, Jesse's patient training evident in her quiet acceptance of the bit. They found Jesse at the north fence line, rain streaming off his Stetson. A massive oak lay across the broken fence, its trunk split by lightning, still smoking despite the downpour. Beyond it, the beam of his flashlight caught the movement of cattle, dark shapes moving too fast in the wrong direction. "You shouldn't be here," he shouted over the wind. "Neither should they." She pointed toward the creek. In the intermittent lightning, they could see the water rising, turning the usual gentle stream into a churning monster. Understanding passed between them without words. Jesse swung onto his horse, and together they rode after the panicked cattle. The rain made everything treacherous. Slick grass, muddy slopes, confused animals that kept changing direction with each thundercrack. Sugar proved her worth, responding to Evelyn's slightest touch despite the chaos. Together, they managed to turn the first group of cattle, steering them toward higher ground. Jesse worked the other side, his quiet voice somehow carrying over the storm as he coaxed the frightened animals away from danger. Then Evelyn saw it, a young heifer, separated from the herd, dangerously close to the creek bank. Before she could shout a warning, the saturated earth gave way. Jesse was already moving, urging his horse through the mud. He reached the heifer just as another section of bank collapsed. In the flash of lightning, Evelyn saw man and horse scrambling for purchase, the heifer bellowing in terror. Without thinking, she guided Sugar to a fallen log that bridged part of the gap. The mare, showing more trust than Evelyn probably deserved, picked her way carefully across. Together, they managed to create a barrier, giving Jesse and the heifer a chance to scramble back to solid ground. The next hour passed in a blur of rain and mud and constant movement. By the time they had all the cattle secured in the south pasture, Evelyn was soaked through and shaking with exhaustion. Her back ached fiercely, and the baby was doing somersaults. Here, Jesse appeared beside, Sugar reaching up to help her dismount. His hands were strong and sure as she slid down, her legs nearly buckling when they hit the ground. He caught her before she could fall, one arm steady around her waist. For a moment they stood there, rain drumming on their hats, both breathing, hard from exertion and lingering adrenaline. This close, she could smell leather and horses and clean sweat beneath the rain. "That was either the bravest or the most foolish thing I've ever seen," he said finally, his voice rough with something that might have been admiration, probably both. She tried to laugh, but it came out more like a gasp as the baby kicked hard. His hand, still at her waist, spread protectively over her side. "You okay?" The concern in his voice, the gentle pressure of his palm through the wet slicker, the way he'd worked beside her without question or judgment, it all combined to create a warmth that had nothing to do with physical exertion. "I'm fine," she said softly. "We're fine." They stood there a moment longer, connected by touch and trust and shared adventure, before Jessie stepped back, professional distance returning like a shield. "Better get you inside. Storm's not over yet." But something had changed, as surely as the lightning had split that oak. In facing down the storm together, they'd forged something new, a partnership built on more than mere employment, a trust deeper than mere necessity. The broken fence post would need replacing come morning, but what had been built between them, in this rain-soaked night, might prove stronger than any wood or wire. Evelyn couldn't sleep. The baby was restless, turning and kicking like it was trying to Morse code messages against her ribs. Outside her window, the quarter moon cast silver shadows across the yard, and somewhere in the distance, a coyote called to its pack. Her fingers found the gold locket at her throat, her mother's, given to her the day she married Jack. Inside, two tiny photographs faced each other. Her parents on their wedding day, and Jack grinning at the camera the day they bought the ranch. The house creaked, its familiar night sounds amplified by solitude. But tonight there was something else, the soft strains of guitar music drifting up from the direction of Jessie's cabin. Before she could think better of it, she was wrapping her robe around her nightgown, slipping her feet into work boots. The night air held the lingering warmth of a late spring day as she made her way down the porch steps. The music stopped abruptly when she approached the cabin. "Mrs. McRae?" Jessie's voice held concern as he appeared in the doorway. "Everything." "All right, Evelyn," she reminded him gently. "And yes, we couldn't sleep. Heard your guitar." He held the instrument self-consciously, an old Martin that had seen better days. "Hope I didn't disturb you." "No, it was nice. Peaceful." She hesitated, then gestured at the cabin's small porch. "Mind some company?" He pulled up a second chair, worn wood protesting as she lowered herself carefully into it. The night spread out before them, stars scattered like diamond dust across the Montana sky. "My mother loved nights like this," she said, touching. "The locket. Used to say you could hear God thinking in the quiet." Jessie's fingers moved absently over the guitar strings, not quite playing. "Sounds like a wise woman." She was. Evelyn unclasped the locket, letting it pool in her palm. "Died when I was 20. Cancer. Dad followed 3 years later. Heart attack. Though I always thought it was more from missing her." "Love like that's rare," Jessie said softly. "Worth remembering. Like you and Claire?" His hand stilled on the guitar. For a moment she thought she'd gone too far, but then he nodded. "Yeah, though we didn't get nearly enough time." He set the guitar aside. "You know what I miss most? The small things. The way she hummed when she cooked. How she could never match her socks. Hannah had that same quirk, used to say matching socks was boring." The corner of his mouth lifted in a sad smile, and Evelyn found herself sharing his pain and his joy in the memory. "Jack used to sing to the cattle," she offered. "Terrible voice, but they didn't seem to mind. Said his grandfather taught him that happy cows make better beef." Her hand went to her belly as the baby kicked again. "I worry sometimes that our little one won't know these things. The stories, the memories. They'll know," Jessie said with quiet certainty. "Through you. Through the way you live, the stories you tell." He paused, then added softly, "My Claire used to say that love leaves echoes. Sometimes they're loud enough for the next generation to hear." Evelyn opened the locket, moonlight catching the tiny photographs. "I've been scared," she admitted. "Not just about the ranch or being alone, but about being enough. For this baby. For everything." "Fear's natural." Jesse's voice held no judgment. "After Claire and Hannah, I was scared to feel anything. Kept moving, taking jobs that ended before connections could form. Seemed easier that way." "What changed?" He was quiet for so long, she thought he might not answer. "Saw your ad. Something." "About it. A pregnant widow trying to save a family ranch. Reminded me that courage isn't about not being scared. It's about being scared and doing what needs doing anyway." The baby kicked again, and Evelyn laughed softly. "Like mother, like child. Neither of us can sit still tonight." Jesse's expression softened. "May I?" He held out his hand, hovering near her belly. She nodded, guiding his palm to where the movement was strongest. His hand was warm through the thin fabric of her nightgown, calloused but gentle. The baby, as if sensing a new presence, gave a particularly emphatic kick. "Strong," he said, something like wonder in his voice. "Like their mama." The simple praise, the warmth of his touch, the intimate quiet of the night, it all combined to create a moment of such profound peace that Evelyn felt tears prick at her eyes. Jesse drew his hand back slowly, but the warmth lingered. "My grandfather used to say that strength shows itself best in how we carry on, in choosing to build something new from what's left of the old. Is that what you're doing here?" she asked softly. "Building something new." He looked at her then, really looked at her, and in the moonlight his eyes held a depth of understanding that made her breath catch. "Maybe," he said finally, "maybe we both are." The locket lay forgotten in her lap, its photographs facing the stars. But somehow, sitting there in the quiet night with Jesse, Evelyn felt closer to all the love it represented, past and present, remembered and growing, like wildflowers after rain. The Paradise Valley Weekly sat folded on Mary Beth's diner counter, its headline catching Evelyn's eye. "Westland Properties announces major development plans." Below it, a photo showed sweeping ranchland, transformed into neat rows of luxury homes. "Sugar for your coffee, hun." Mary Beth's voice pulled her attention away from the paper. The waitress had been serving breakfast here since before Evelyn was born, and her knowing smile hadn't changed in all those years. "Jesse, you want a refill?" "No, ma'am, thank you." Jesse sat across from Evelyn in the booth, his hat on the seat beside him. They'd come into town for supplies and livestock vaccines, deciding to grab breakfast first. Now, Evelyn wondered if that had been a mistake. She could feel the weight of eyes on them, curious glances from other diners, whispered conversations behind raised menus. Small-town Montana didn't change much. A widow having breakfast with her hired hand was bound to start tongues wagging. "Heard they're offering double market value for some properties," said Tom Wheeler at the counter, his voice carrying deliberately. "Smart folks are taking the money and running." Evelyn stared into her coffee cup, remembering the bank meeting, Margaret's gentle suggestion about selling. Jesse's boot touched hers under the table. Not quite an accident, not quite on purpose. A quiet reminder that she wasn't alone. "Your eggs are getting cold," he said softly. She managed a few bites, but the food tasted like sawdust. The baby shifted restlessly, picking up on her tension. When Mary Beth brought the check, Evelyn reached for her purse, but Jesse was faster. "My turn," he said simply. "You covered the feed store bill." More whispers, more looks. Evelyn forced herself to straighten her spine, channel her mother's quiet dignity. "Thank you, Jesse. We should get to the vet's before Dr. Martinez gets busy." Outside, the spring morning had turned warm, Main Street coming alive with Saturday traffic. They walked toward Jesse's truck, parked in front of Wilson's Hardware. Sarah Bennett, Evelyn's doctor, hurried across the street to intercept them. "Evelyn, I was hoping to catch you." She glanced at Jesse, professional courtesy in her nod. "Everything okay? Any more Braxton Hicks?" "I'm fine, Sarah. Just routine errands." Good. Sarah's eyes darted between them. You know, my brother in Bozeman has some real estate contacts, if you're thinking about options. The concern in her voice was genuine, which somehow made it worse. Evelyn felt Jesse tense beside her, though his expression remained neutral. The ranch isn't for sale, Evelyn said firmly, but thank you for thinking of me. They were almost to the truck when Betty Wilson emerged from the hardware store, her sharp eyes taking in every detail of their proximity. Evelyn, dear, how are you managing? You know, my nephew's wife just loved that retirement community in Billings. Mrs. McRae has errands to finish, Jesse said quietly, opening the truck door for Evelyn. His tone was perfectly respectful, but something in it, a protective edge, made Betty step back. In the truck, Evelyn let out a shaky breath. I'm sorry. I should have known. Nothing to be sorry for. Jesse started the engine. Small. Towns run on talk. Doesn't make it true, but it makes it powerful. She touched the newspaper she'd taken from the diner. They're buying up everything between here and Livingston. Subdivisions, golf courses, luxury homes. Paradise Valley won't be paradise much longer. Jesse was quiet for a moment, guiding the truck toward the veterinary clinic. Land's only worth what we decide it's worth. Money's one measure, legacy's another. Jack's legacy, she said softly. Yours too. He glanced at her. And the little ones. Some things mean more than market value. The baby kicked, as if in agreement. Evelyn smoothed her hand over her belly, thinking of generations of McRaes who'd worked this land, thinking of Jack's dreams for their child, thinking unexpectedly of Jesse's quiet strength beside her. They'll keep coming, won't they? The offers, the pressure, the well-meaning advice? Probably. He pulled into the vet's parking lot. Question is, what do you want to do about it? She looked at him then, really looked at him. In the morning light, his face was open, concerned, but careful not to influence her decision, supporting, without pushing, caring without demanding. I want to fight, she said, surprising herself with the firmness in her voice. I want to keep what's ours. His smile was brief but warm. Then that's what we'll do. The word we hung between them, neither challenging it. Sometimes the simplest words carried the most meaning. Jesse? She caught his arm as he reached for the door handle. Thank you for understanding, he touched. The brim of his hat, that courtly gesture that somehow contained volumes. Always will, Evelyn, always will. The wood shavings curled away from Jesse's knife like pale ribbons in the porch light. Evelyn watched from the kitchen window as his hands moved with sure, gentle strokes, transforming a piece of pine into something alive. She hadn't meant to spy, but there was something mesmerizing about his concentration, the way his head bent over his work in the growing dusk. The day's heat lingered, making the house feel close despite the open windows. At 8.5 months, pregnant, every movement felt like wading through warm molasses. The baby had been restless all day, responding to her own unease after the morning's confrontation. Mrs. McRae, Richard Chapman from Westland Properties, had appeared at the ranch just after sunrise, all polished shoes and practiced smile. I hope you'll reconsider our offer. The market won't stay this high forever. She'd found herself reaching for Jesse's steady presence beside her, grateful when he stepped forward. The lady said no. And you are? Chapman's smile had turned cold. Jesse Cole, ranch manager. Ah. Chapman's eyes had flickered between them, calculating. Well, Miss McRae, when you're ready to discuss this with the actual property owner, Mrs. Jesse's voice had held steel beneath its quiet, and she is the actual property owner. Now, watching Jesse work in the evening light, she remembered the way he'd stood his ground, protective without being possessive. The memory stirred something warm in her chest, something that had been growing stronger with each passing day. A sharp kick from the baby made her gasp. Jesse's head snapped up, his keen ears catching the sound even through the screen door. Evelyn, you okay? Fine, she called back, embarrassed at being caught watching. Just restless night. He set aside his carving, crossing to the door. Need anything? The concern in his voice made her throat tight. No, Another kick made her wince. "Actually, would you mind some company? It's too quiet in here." He held the door for her, helping her settle into the porch rocker that had appeared mysteriously one day last week. She'd never asked where it came from, but she had her suspicions. "What are you making?" she asked, nodding toward the half-finished. "Carving." A flush crept up his neck. It's not finished yet. Show me anyway." He handed her the piece of wood, still warm from his hands. Even unfinished, she could see what it was becoming. A horse in full gallop, mane flying, every line suggesting movement and grace. "It's beautiful," she breathed. "Is it sugar?" He ducked his head. "Thought maybe for the baby's room, if you want it." The simple gesture, this man who could break wild horses, taking the time to create something so delicate, made her eyes burn. "Jessie, you don't have to. I love it." She ran her fingers over the smooth curves, feeling the care in every detail. "How did you learn to do this?" "My grandfather." He picked up his knife again, turning it so it caught the last sunlight. "Taught me when I was young. Said idle hands make for restless hearts." Wise man. Yeah. He was quiet for a moment, then added softly, "He would have liked you. Said the measure of a person isn't in how they handle good times, but in how they face the hard ones." The words settled between them, heavy with meaning. Evelyn thought of the developer's threats, of the bank's deadline looming, of all the challenges still ahead. "Sometimes I wonder if I'm facing them well enough." "You are." His certainty warmed her. "You're the strongest person I know, Evelyn." The way he said her name, like it was something precious, made her heart skip. She looked up to find him watching. His eyes holding something that made her breath catch. The moment stretched, filled with unspoken possibilities. Then the baby kicked again, hard enough to make her laugh breathlessly, breaking the tension. Jessie's hand moved toward her belly, hesitating. She caught it, guided it to the spot. His palm was warm through her dress, slightly rough with calluses, perfectly still as they waited. The baby kicked again, right against his hand. His smile, when it came, transformed his whole face. "Strong," he said, voice rough with emotion. "Like their mama, and gentle," she found herself saying. "Like you." His eyes met hers, and this time neither looked away. The evening crickets began their chorus. A breeze stirred the cottonwoods, and something shifted between them, subtle as a change in weather, profound as a change in seasons. The carved horse sat forgotten in her lap, but its presence remained, a testament to careful hands and patient hearts, to beauty emerging from raw materials, to the quiet way love sometimes sneaks up on you, disguised as simple kindness. Later, after Jessie had walked her to the door, his hand hovering near her elbow as if he couldn't quite help himself, Evelyn stood at her bedroom window. She could see him back on the porch, bending over his carving again, putting the final touches on what she now recognized as a gift of the heart. The baby moved, gentler now, settling. "I know, little one," she whispered. "I'm a little scared too. But sometimes," she touched her window, watching Jessie work in the gathering dark, "sometimes the scariest things turn out to be the most right." The envelope had no return address, just her name typed neatly on heavy cream paper. Inside, Evelyn found a yellowed newspaper clipping and what looked like a photocopy of an old wanted poster. Her heart stopped when she saw the face in the grainy photo, younger, harder, but unmistakably Jessie. "Armed robbery," the text read. "Suspect Jesse Michael Cole, wanted in connection with First National Bank robbery, Tulsa, Oklahoma. Armed and dangerous. Age 25, the newspaper clipping was dated 3 years later. Cole sentenced to 5 years. Judge cites remorse, cooperation with authorities, and clean prior record in reduced sentence." Her hands shook as she read the accompanying note, typed on the same cream paper. "Thought you should know who you've let into your home. Consider this a friendly warning from a concerned neighbor." The baby kicked sharply, responding to her sudden tension. Outside, she could hear Jesse's voice as he worked with the horses in the morning sun, that gentle tone that had become as familiar as her own heartbeat. Armed robbery, 5 years in prison. The words seemed to blur before her eyes, impossible to reconcile with the man who carved delicate wooden horses and hummed old country songs while he fixed fence posts. A memory surfaced, Jesse's voice. On the porch that night, talking about Claire and Hannah, 8 years ago, he'd said. After prison then, after he'd rebuilt his life, started over. The sound of boots on the porch made her jump. She shoved the papers under a cookbook just as Jesse appeared in the doorway. "Mail come yet?" he asked casually, then stopped short when he saw her face. "Evelyn, what's wrong?" She tried to speak, couldn't find the words. Her hand moved unconsciously to the hidden papers, and something in her expression must have told him everything. The change that came over him was subtle but profound. His shoulders squared, his jaw tightened, and something shuttered behind his eyes, as if he were preparing himself for a blow he'd always known was coming. "How much do they say?" His voice was quiet, resigned. "Enough." She pulled out the papers. With trembling fingers. "Armed robbery, prison time." He nodded slowly, not trying to deny it. "Wanted to tell you, should have told you, just what, Jessie?" Her voice cracked. "Just thought you'd work here, live here, become—" She stopped, unable to name what he'd become to her. "Important?" He offered the word like a confession. "Trusted? Yeah, I thought about that too. Every day. Every time you smiled at me or trusted me with another piece of your life." He moved to the window, staring out at the land they'd worked together. Kept telling myself I'd find the right moment. Kept being a coward instead. "Tell me now." It came out more plea than demand. "Tell me everything." He was quiet for so long, she thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was raw with memory. "I was young, stupid. Got mixed up with some bad people after my parents died. Thought I was smart enough to handle it, tough enough to not care who got hurt." His hands gripped the window frame. "Nobody did get hurt, thank God. But they could have. That's what haunted me most in prison. Not what happened, but what could have. 5 years, she said softly. Got out in 3, good behavior, worked every program they had, learned carpentry, animal husbandry, found out I had a way with troubled horses. Maybe because I knew what it was like, needing a second chance." He turned to face her, and the pain in his eyes made her chest ache. "Met Claire 6 months after I got out. She was a counselor, helping ex-cons rebuild their lives. She saw something in me worth saving. We had 4 beautiful years together. Before," his voice caught, "before the accident. And after. After I wandered, couldn't stay anywhere too long. People find out about your past. They only see what you were, not what you're trying to become." He gestured helplessly at the wanted poster. "Like that. Someone obviously did some digging. Probably that developer, trying to pressure you into selling. By destroying my trust in you," she said slowly, the pieces falling into place. "Can't destroy what's already gone." The defeat in his voice hurt worse than the revelations. He reached for his hat. "I'll pack my things, Jessie." She stood, one hand bracing against the table, the other pressed to her belly where the baby kicked restlessly. "Is there anything else I should know?" He met her eyes squarely. "I'm not that man anymore. Haven't been for a long time. Everything. I've told you about Claire, about Hannah, about why I came here. That's all true. And everything I feel—" He stopped, swallowed hard. "Everything I feel about this place, about you and the baby, that's more true than anything." The morning sun streamed through the window, highlighting the silver in his hair, the lines around his eyes, lines earned through hard experience and harder redemption. The wanted poster showed a stranger's face, but this man, this Jesse, she knew, had come to know, to trust, maybe even to— "The developer sent this because you're helping me save the ranch," she said quietly. "Because you're making a difference here. Because they're afraid of what we can do together." Hope flickered in his eyes, quickly guarded. "Evelyn, you don't have to. Everyone deserves a second chance," she cut him off. "That's what Claire believed, isn't it? What you believed when you decided to start over." He nodded, wordless. "Then believe in this one too." She held out the papers. "The past is past, Jessie. What matters is who you are now. Who we are now. His hands shook slightly as he took the papers, crumpling them into a ball. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then the baby kicked again, hard enough to make Evelyn gasp, and Jesse was beside her in an instant, supporting her elbow, his touch as gentle as ever. Everything and nothing had changed. The wanted poster lay discarded on the floor, but the man who held her steady, this man she had come to depend on, to care for, he was real as the ranch beneath their feet, as real as the life growing inside her, as real as second. Chances and morning light and the possibility of redemption. "Stay," she whispered. "Please." His answer was in the way his hand tightened on her arm, in the shuddering breath he released, in the tears that neither of them acknowledged as they stood together in the warming day, letting the shadows of the past fade in the light of what could be. The first pain hit just before midnight, sharp enough to wake Evelyn from a fitful sleep. She lay still, counting seconds, trying to remember Dr. Bennett's instructions about Braxton Hicks versus real labor. Too early, she thought. Nearly 3 weeks too early. The second pain answered her doubts, stealing her breath. She fumbled for her phone, hitting the speed dial for Jesse's cabin. He answered on the first ring. "Evelyn? Something's wrong." Her voice sounded strange to her own ears. "The baby—" She heard his door slam before she finished speaking. Moments later, boots pounded up her porch steps. He didn't bother knocking, just called out, "Coming in!" She was already trying to stand when he reached the bedroom, one hand braced against the wall, the other curved protectively around her belly. The sight of him, disheveled from sleep but eyes sharp with concern, nearly undid her composure. "Hospital," he said, taking in her pale face. "No arguments. The ranch, we'll keep." He was already gathering her things, moving with calm efficiency. "Martinez kid can cover morning chores. I called Doc Bennett. She's meeting us there." Of course he had. Of course he'd thought of everything, while she could barely think past. The next wave of pain. The drive to Livingston passed in a blur of dark roads and worried glances. Jesse drove with one hand on the wheel, the other holding hers through each contraction. He didn't offer empty reassurances, just steady pressure when she squeezed his fingers and quiet support between the waves of pain. "Tell me a story," she gasped as another contraction built. "Anything, just distract me." Without hesitation, he launched into a tale about his grandfather teaching him to break horses. "Key is patience," he said, his voice low and soothing. "Moving with them, not against them. Understanding that fear and pain make any creature fight harder." She focused on his voice, letting it anchor her through the pain. When they finally reached the hospital, he was there before she could even reach for the door, helping her out with those careful, strong hands. Dr. Bennett met them in the emergency room, her face professionally calm, but concern evident in her quick movements. "How far apart are the contractions?" 4 minutes, Jesse answered, before Evelyn could. "Started just before midnight." The next. Hours passed in a haze of medical terms and monitoring equipment. Preeclampsia, they said, dangerous blood pressure levels. The baby's heartbeat occasionally dropping. Through it all, Jesse stayed. When they said only family could remain, Evelyn heard herself say, "He is family." No one questioned it. He stood quietly in the corner during examinations, turned his back, when needed, but never left. When the medication finally took effect and the contractions eased, he was there with ice chips and gentle hands rubbing her back. "You don't have to stay," she whispered during a quiet moment near dawn. "Yes, I do." Simple, certain. She dozed fitfully as the sun rose, waking to find Jesse studying a paper with a furrowed brow. The hospital bill, she realized. Even with insurance, the numbers would be staggering. "Don't," she said softly. "We'll figure it out." He looked up, caught. "We will," he agreed, but his expression remained troubled. "Just thinking about Claire." He moved closer, settling into the chair beside her bed. "Night, she went into labor with Hannah. I was so scared. Kept thinking I wasn't ready, wasn't good enough to be a father." His smile was sad but warm. "She told me being scared just proved how much I cared. Evelyn reached for his hand, needing the connection. She was right. Yeah, he squeezed her fingers. What I'm trying to say is, you're not alone in this. Any of it. The monitor beeped steadily, marking her heart rate, the baby's stronger rhythm. Outside the window, morning painted the mountains gold, promising another hot summer day. I used to think, she said carefully, that being strong meant handling everything myself, that asking for help somehow meant failing. Strength comes in different forms. His thumb traced circles on her palm. Sometimes it's in knowing when to lean on someone else. Is that what we're doing? Leaning on each other? His eyes met hers, honest and deep. I think we're doing a lot more than that, Evelyn. The moment stretched between them, full of unspoken feelings and growing certainty. Then Dr. Bennett bustled in with more test results, and the spell broke, but didn't shatter. Later, when they were releasing her with strict instructions for bed rest, Jessie helped her into a wheelchair. The hospital bill lay folded in his pocket, a problem for another day. What mattered now was getting her home, keeping her safe, protecting what was growing between them. Not just the baby, but this fragile, strengthening thing that felt more like family with each passing hour. "You ready?" he asked, his hand warm on her shoulder. She covered it with her own, feeling the quiet strength in his touch. Ready. Together, they headed home to their waiting ranch, where morning chores and financial worries and uncertain futures still loomed. But somehow those challenges seemed less daunting now. Sometimes trust, like healing, came in small moments, in held hands and steady presence, in choosing to believe that love, in all its forms, was worth the risk. The McRae Ranch deed hung in its simple frame on Evelyn's office wall, the paper, yellowed with age, but the ink still clear. This land, being 640 acres more or less, granted to Thomas James McRae in the year 1889. She touched the glass, tracing the familiar words as voices drifted up from the front porch. "Mrs. McRae is on bed rest." Jessie's calm voice carried through the open window. "Doctor's orders." Then, as her employee, Richard Chapman's tone dripped condescension. "You can deliver this offer, final one. After today, things might get complicated." Evelyn pushed herself up from the desk, moving carefully. 2 weeks after the hospital scare, she was supposed to be taking it easy. But some battles needed facing head-on. "I can handle complications, Mr. Chapman." She appeared in the doorway, one hand bracing against the frame. Jessie moved instantly to her side, his shoulder offering subtle support. "What I can't handle is people threatening my family's legacy." Chapman's smile didn't reach his eyes. "No. You threat, Mrs. McRae. Just business." He held out a thick envelope. "Westland Properties is prepared to offer 3 times market value. Cash deal, immediate close. More than generous, given the property's condition." His gaze swept dismissively over the weathered barn, the patched roof, the ancient truck that had seen better days, all the small signs of struggle that had seemed insurmountable just months ago. "The condition," Jessie said quietly, "is improving. As you can see." He wasn't wrong. The fences stood straight and strong, the cattle were fat on summer grass, and the hayfield promised a bumper crop. Even the old barn had a fresh coat of paint, courtesy of Jessie's endless work ethic. "Charming," Chapman said. "But let's be realistic. A pregnant widow and a ranch hand trying to run a working cattle operation? The bank's patience won't last forever. One bad season, one medical emergency." His eyes dropped meaningfully to Evelyn's belly. "Why risk it?" "Because some things are worth the risk." Evelyn's voice was steady, drawing strength from Jessie's solid presence. "This land has been in my husband's family for 4 generations. Our child will be the 5th, if you keep it." Chapman's pleasant mask slipped. "Things happen, Mrs. McRae. Accidents, equipment failures, cattle wandering through, broken fences. Running a ranch is dangerous work." The threat hung in the air like smoke. Jessie took a half step forward, and Chapman retreated instinctively. "Careful." Jessie said softly. Threats like that could be taken personally. Just stating facts. Chapman straightened his tie. I'll leave the offer. When things get difficult, and they will, give us a call. They watched his luxury SUV disappear down the driveway, dust coating its polished finish. Only when it was gone did Evelyn let herself lean more heavily against Jessie. You should be resting, he murmured. Probably. She didn't move. He's not going to stop, is he? No. Jessie's arm slipped around her waist, supporting her back into the house. But neither are we. In the office, she sank into her chair, looking up at the deed. Jessie followed her gaze, understanding in his eyes. Tell me about Thomas James McRae, he said, pulling up another chair. The man who started all this. A smile tugged at her lips. Jack's great-grandfather. Came out from Virginia with nothing but a wagon and a dream. Built the original homestead cabin himself. It's still standing out by the creek. Strong foundations. Yes, she touched her belly, feeling the baby's familiar movements. But Chapman's right about one thing. The bank's patience is running thin, even with all our improvements. I've been thinking about that. Jessie leaned forward, elbows on his knees. The south pasture. The one we haven't been using. Perfect for winter wheat, high demand, good prices, could give us the extra income we need to get through till spring. Winter wheat, she considered it. We'd need equipment, seed money. Martinez has a planter he'd rent cheap. Seeds we could get on credit from the co-op. I know it's a risk, but some things are worth the risk. She echoed his words from months ago, when he'd first arrived. His eyes met hers, warm with something deeper than professional concern. Everything that matters comes with risk, Evelyn. She knew he wasn't just talking about farming. The air between them hummed with unspoken feelings, with possibilities as vast as the Montana sky. The baby kicked, strong and sure, and Evelyn made her decision. Let's do it, all of it. The wheat, the fight, everything. Together, he asked softly. She reached for his hand, twining their fingers together. Above them, the old deed witnessed another generation choosing to stand their ground, to believe in the power of legacy and love and second chances. Together, she agreed. Come hell or high water. His smile, rare and real, was like sunrise over the mountains. They won't know what hit them. And looking at him, this man who had become so much more than a hired hand, who had helped her rebuild not just the ranch but her own heart, Evelyn believed it. They were no longer just employer and employee, widow and ranch hand. They were partners in every sense that mattered, standing together against whatever storms might come. The land deed caught the afternoon light, its glass reflecting their joined hands like a promise. 5 generations of McRae dreams, about to be joined by something new, something built on trust and redemption, and the kind of love that grows slow and strong, like winter wheat taking root in fertile soil. The first contraction came during the pre-dawn quiet, different from the false alarm weeks before. Evelyn knew instantly. This was it. Through the window she could see Jessie's cabin light already on. He'd been rising early to check the winter wheat sprouts before starting regular chores. Her hands found the baby blanket on her bedside chair, soft yellow wool that Jessie's grandmother had made for Hannah, carefully preserved all these years. He'd given it to her yesterday, his voice rough with emotion. Claire would have wanted, if you'd like. Now her fingers traced the delicate pattern as another contraction built. She reached for her phone, but before she could dial, a soft knock came at her door. Evelyn? Jessie's voice held concern. Saw your light. Everything okay? It's time, she managed, another contraction stealing her breath. The door opened and he was there, calm and steady as always. His eyes took in everything, her position, the blanket clutched in her hands, the fear she couldn't quite hide. Been timing them? She shook her head. Just started, but it feels different. Okay. He moved with quiet efficiency, gathering the hospital bag they'd prepared. Think you can walk, or should I bring the truck around? Another contraction answered that question, stronger than the last. Jessie didn't hesitate, just scooped her into his arms as if she weighed nothing. The "Blanket," she gasped. "Don't forget—" "Got it." He'd already tucked it beside her. "Hold on to me now." The drive to Livingston passed in a blur of pain and pre-dawn darkness. Jesse kept one hand on the wheel, the other clasping hers, his voice a steady anchor. "Remember to breathe, just like Dr. Bennett showed us. That's it. You're doing great. Us." Somewhere along the line, they'd stopped being separate entities. The thought comforted her even as another contraction ripped through her body. The hospital corridors were quiet at this hour. Dr. Bennett, already alerted, met them at the entrance. Her eyebrows rose slightly at the sight of Jesse carrying Evelyn, but she made no comment. "How far apart?" 3 minutes, Jesse answered. He'd been timing them without her noticing, getting stronger. Everything moved quickly after that. The labor room, monitors beeping, nurses efficient and kind. Through it all, Jesse stayed. His presence as essential as breathing. "Family only," a nurse started to say, but Evelyn caught Jesse's hand. "He is family." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Jesse's fingers tightened on hers, and in his eyes she saw everything they'd never said aloud. Hours passed in a haze of pain and determination. The yellow blanket lay across the foot of the bed, a splash of sunshine in the sterile room. When things got hard, when she didn't think she could do it anymore, Evelyn found herself focusing on it, on the love stitched into every row, on the legacy of mothers and fathers and chosen family it represented. "Tell me about Hannah," she gasped during one particularly brutal contraction. Tell me about when she was born." Jesse's hand smoothed her hair back from her forehead. "She came just before sunrise," he said softly. "Tiny little thing with a head full of dark hair. Claire said she looked like a midnight fairy." Another contraction built. "More," she pleaded. "Keep talking." She had this way of scrunching up her nose when she was thinking hard about something. Got that from her mama, and when she laughed, his voice caught. When she laughed, it was like everything good in the world wrapped up in one sound. The sun was rising when the final push came. Jesse's hand was strong in hers, his voice steady in her ear. "You've got this, Evelyn. You're the strongest person." "I know." The baby's first cry filled the room, just as golden light spilled through the windows. "It's a boy," Dr. Bennett announced, joy in her professional voice. They laid him on Evelyn's chest, red-faced and perfect. With trembling hands, she wrapped him in the yellow blanket, its soft wool warming quickly against his skin. "Hey there, little man," Jesse whispered, and something in his voice made Evelyn look up. Tears tracked unashamedly down his face as he gazed at the baby, at their baby, she realized suddenly. Not by blood, but by every choice they'd made, every moment they'd shared leading to this one. "Would you like to hold him?" Jesse stepped back, uncertainty crossing his features. I'm not." "You are," she said firmly. "You're exactly who you should be, who we need you to be." Carefully, so carefully, she placed the blanket-wrapped bundle in his arms. Jesse cradled the baby with the same gentle strength he used with newborn colts, with broken things needing mending with her own heart. "Hello, Thomas," he said softly. Evelyn's breath caught. "How did you know?" "Thomas James McRae," Jesse smiled. "Seems right, naming him after the man who started it all. If that's okay, it's perfect." She watched them together, this man who had come into their lives like an answer to an unspoken prayer, and her son, wrapped in a blanket that bridged past and present, loss and love, endings and beginnings. Outside, the sun climbed higher, promising another beautiful Montana day. On the ranch, the winter wheat was pushing through rich soil, reaching for light. And here, in this quiet room, a new family was being born, not from blood, but from choice, from trust, from love. The bank notice arrived on a crisp October morning, its official letterhead stark against the pile of well wishes and baby cards. Evelyn read it while Thomas dozed in his bassinet beside her desk, his tiny fists curled against the yellow blanket that rarely left his side. "Final notice of default," the letter began. The rest blurred before her eyes. "Foreclosure proceedings." 30 days. Immediate payment required. Bad news? She looked up to find Jesse in the doorway, his clothes dusty from checking the winter wheat. 2 months since Thomas's birth, and he still moved through the house with that careful respect, as if uncertain of his place despite everything they'd shared. The worst. She handed him the letter. They're calling in the loan, all of it. His jaw tightened as he read. Chapman must have friends at the bank. She lifted Thomas as he stirred, breathing in his sweet baby scent. 30 days, Jesse. How can we possibly— The wheat's coming along strong. He pulled up a chair, close enough that his knee brushed hers. Another month and we could— We don't have another month. The fear she'd been holding at bay threatened to overwhelm her. Even with all our improvements, all your hard work— Our work, he corrected gently. Then more hesitantly, Evelyn, I've been thinking. I have some savings. Not much, but— No, she cut him off. You've already given so much. I can't ask. You're not asking, I'm offering. His hand found hers where it rested on Thomas's back. This place, what we've built here, it's worth everything I have. The simple declaration hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Thomas made a small sound, and Jesse's finger stroked the baby's cheek with infinite tenderness. Besides, he added softly, I promised someone once that I'd make things right. Live honest. Build something good. Claire? Yeah. His eyes held memories and determination in equal measure. She believed in second chances, in redemption. This place, you and Thomas, you're mine. Before Evelyn could respond, gravel crunched in the driveway. Through the window, they saw Chapman's familiar SUV, followed by Margaret Chen's more modest sedan. Well, Evelyn said, her voice steadier than she felt. Seems like it's time to face the music. Jesse stood, his hand lingering on Thomas's head. Want me to take him? She nodded, carefully transferring the sleeping baby. Something about seeing them together, Jessie cradling her son with such natural grace, strengthened her resolve. Margaret spoke first when they met on the porch, her professional mask slipping to show genuine regret. Evelyn, I tried to buy you more time, but my friends on the board were quite insistent, Chapman finished smoothly. Still, our offer stands. More than enough to cover your debts. Start fresh somewhere else. This is our somewhere else, Jessie said quietly, Thomas secure in his arms. This is our fresh start. Chapman's eyes narrowed. I'm speaking to the property owner. So am I. Evelyn stepped forward. Jessie's right. This isn't just land for sale. It's our home, our future. Admirable sentiment. Chapman's smile turned cold. But sentiment doesn't pay bills. Unless you can produce full payment in 30 days. 28 days, Jessie corrected. And we have a plan. Margaret looked up from her paperwork. The winter wheat? It's promising, but the timing, not just the wheat. Jessie's voice held. Quiet confidence. Show them, Evelyn. She retrieved the folder they'd prepared, hands steady now. Contracts from 3 neighboring ranches wanting to join our hay cooperative. Projected revenue from the improved breeding program. And this. She pulled out the final document. Approval for an agricultural education grant. Seems the state's interested in our ideas about sustainable ranching practices. Chapman's facade cracked slightly. Small change. It's not enough. Add my savings, Jessie said. And this. He handed Evelyn a piece of paper she hadn't seen before. Sold my grandfather's property in Texas. Land developers there, ironically enough, just came through yesterday. Evelyn stared at the amount. Combined with their other resources, it would be enough. Just enough. You can't, she whispered. Already did. His eyes met hers. Told you. This is where I belong. If you'll have me. The moment stretched, full of unspoken things. Thomas stirred, whimpering slightly, and Jessie soothed him with the same instinctive care he'd shown since the first moment he'd held him. Well, Mrs. McRae, Margaret's voice was gentle. What's your decision? Evelyn looked at her son in Jessie's arms, at the winter wheat stretching green against the Montana sky. at the home she and Jack had dreamed of, now transformed into something new and equally precious. "My decision," she said clearly, "is that the McRae ranch stays in the family." She reached for Jesse's free hand, twining their fingers together. "All of the family." Chapman's face darkened. "You're making a mistake." "No," Jesse said softly, his hand warm and sure in Evelyn's. "For the first time in a long while, everything's exactly right." Thomas chose that moment to wake fully, his blue eyes, so like Jack's, blinking up at them. The yellow blanket slipped slightly, and Jesse adjusted it with practiced ease, as natural as if he'd been doing it all his life, as if he'd been meant to all along. And maybe, Evelyn thought, watching Chapman's defeated retreat, that was the real miracle. Not just saving the ranch, but finding this, a new kind of family, built on choice and trust and love that grew as steady as winter wheat reaching for spring. The new ranch sign caught the morning light, fresh paint gleaming against weathered posts. "McRae and Cole Family Ranch," it read, and below in smaller letters, Esther 1889. Jesse stood back, measuring the level one final time before tightening the last bolt. "Looks good," Evelyn said softly, coming up beside him. Thomas slept against her shoulder, wrapped in his yellow blanket despite the warm spring morning. "Think the neighbors will talk?" "Let them." His hand found the small of her back. Natural, as breathing now. "They've been talking since day one." He was right. The gossip had started the moment he'd moved from the cabin to the main house after paying off the bank, and it had only intensified when they'd filed the paperwork making him Thomas's legal guardian. But something had shifted in the past months, as if the town had finally seen what had been growing all along. Not a scandal, but a family being born. "Morning, folks." Tom Wheeler pulled up in his truck, hay dust coating its sides. Sign looks mighty fine. Here for my share of that winter wheat profit, if you're settling accounts today. "Come on in," Jesse invited, his tone easy now with the neighbors who'd once viewed him with suspicion. Coffee's hot. The kitchen had become command central for their growing cooperative. 5 local ranches had joined after seeing the success of their first season, pooling resources and sharing profits. The ledger that had once shown only mounting debt now recorded steady growth. Sarah Bennett called. Evelyn mentioned, as she settled Thomas in his high chair. "Asked if we're still hosting the spring festival next weekend?" Jesse poured coffee for their guest. Whole town's curious about the new education center. The former barn now housed classrooms and demonstration areas, part of their grant program teaching sustainable ranching practices. It had been Jesse's idea, turning their struggles into lessons that might help other small ranches survive. "Speaking of the festival," Tom said carefully, "Mary Beth wanted me to ask. That is, she's wondering if there's going to be another announcement soon. Something about rings and such." Evelyn felt her cheeks warm. Jesse's hand found hers under the table, his thumb brushing over her empty ring finger. "All in good time, Tom," he said quietly. "Some things are worth doing right." Later, after Tom had left with his check and promises to bring his wife's famous pie to the festival, Evelyn found Jesse on the porch. He was watching Thomas toddle after a butterfly in the yard, ready to catch him if he stumbled. "He's getting faster," Jesse observed, pride evident in his voice, like his papa. The words slipped out naturally, and Jesse's breath caught. She turned to face him. "That's what you are, you know, what you've been since the day he was born, maybe even before." "Evelyn." His voice was rough with emotion. "I've been thinking," she continued, heart pounding but voice steady. "About what?" Tom said. "About doing things right. Have you now?" A smile played at the corners of his mouth. "Seems to me we've been doing things right all along. Building something real. Something true." She took his hand, weathered and strong and so gentle, with all he loved. "So maybe it's time to make it official, all of it." He turned to face her fully, eyes serious despite his smile. "You sure? People will talk." "People already talk. Let them see what I see. A man who came here broken and helped heal, not just the ranch, but my heart. who loves my son like his own, who taught me that family isn't just about blood, but about choice. Jessie's free hand came up to cup her cheek. And what choice would you have me make, Evelyn McRae? Marry me. The words came easily, naturally as spring following winter. Be Thomas's father in name as well as heart. Let us be what we've become, a family. His kiss was answer enough, tender and sure, and tasting of promises. Thomas's delighted giggle made them break apart. He'd abandoned his butterfly chase to watch them, clapping his small hands. That a yes? Evelyn asked against Jessie's lips. That's a what took you so long? He gathered them both close, Thomas squirming happily between them. Been carrying my mama's ring in my pocket for months, waiting for the right moment. And this is it? He looked around, at their thriving ranch, at their son's sunny smile, at the new sign declaring their shared legacy. This is perfect. This is home. The morning sun painted everything in shades of promise, glinting off the sign that proclaimed what they'd known in their hearts for months. They were no longer just two broken people finding healing together. They were family, bound by choice and trust, and a love that had grown as steady as winter wheat, as strong as Montana mountains, as real as the ring Jessie slipped on her finger while their son danced around their legs. Dawn breaking indeed, Evelyn thought. The dawn of everything they'd been moving toward all along. The adoption papers lay on Judge Harrison's desk, crisp and official in their legal formatting. Evelyn watched as Jessie signed his name with careful strokes, his hand steady despite the emotion she could see in the set of his shoulders. Thomas James McRae Cole, the judge read, smiling at the toddler perched on Jessie's hip. Has a nice ring to it. Thomas, more interested in Jessie's bolo tie than the proceedings, reached for the silver clasp shaped like a running horse. Jessie caught his small hand, pressing a kiss to the fingers that had become so dear to him. Just a few more minutes, partner, he murmured. Then we can go see the horses. The judge's chambers felt both formal and intimate, with morning sun streaming through tall windows and family photos lining the walls. Sarah Bennett stood as their witness, her eyes suspiciously bright as she watched the proceedings. Now, Judge Harrison said, shuffling papers, I see you've also filed for a marriage license. Next month, Evelyn confirmed, her hand finding Jessie's free one. Small ceremony at the ranch? Small. Sarah laughed. Half the county's already planning to attend. Mary Beth's baking 3 cakes. The judge chuckled. Word travels fast in Paradise Valley. He lifted his pen. Well, let's make this part official at least. By the power vested in me by the state of Montana, I hereby declare Jesse Michael Cole the legal father of Thomas James McRae Cole. The words echoed in the quiet room, profound in their simplicity. Jessie's hand tightened on hers and she saw him blink hard. Papa. Thomas chose that moment to grab the bolo tie successfully, making them all laugh. That's right, little man. Jessie's voice was rough with emotion. That's exactly right. Outside the courthouse, spring sunshine warmed the morning. Sarah hugged them both, kissing Thomas's cheek. Jack would be so happy, she whispered to Evelyn. He always said, love finds a way. Evelyn watched Jessie buckle Thomas into his car seat, their son chattering about the promised horses. He was right, just not in any way we could have imagined. Back at the ranch, the changes were evident everywhere. The education center bustled with activity, local ranchers attending workshops on sustainable practices. The winter wheat stretched green and promising toward the mountains. Even the old house seemed to glow with fresh paint and renewed purpose. Home sweet home, Jessie said softly as they pulled up. Then with a glance at Evelyn, still can't quite believe it sometimes. Believe it. She squeezed his hand. You belong here, have since the day you arrived. They walked toward the house, Thomas between them holding their hands and jumping every third step. The yellow blanket, now serving as his beloved comfort object, trailed from his other hand. Speaking of belonging, Jessie said carefully, I got something for you. Been waiting for the right moment. In their bedroom, Their bedroom, she thought with a surge of joy. He pulled a small box from his dresser drawer. Inside lay a delicate gold chain, and on it Claire's ring, she breathed, recognizing it from photographs. Jessie, she wore it on a chain after Hannah was born, he explained. Said some things were too precious to risk losing in ranch work. His calloused fingers lifted the chain. Thought maybe, if you wanted, it's perfect. She turned, letting him fasten it around her neck. The ring settled just above her heart. A warm weight of history and hope combined. Thomas's voice floated up from downstairs, where Sarah was watching him. Papa! Horses now! Duty calls. Jessie smiled, but he didn't move immediately. Instead, he drew Evelyn close, his forehead resting against hers. Thank you, he whispered, for my son, for our family, for everything. She closed her eyes, breathing in the familiar scent of him, leather and hay and home. Thank you for coming here, for staying, for loving us. Papa, Thomas called again, impatient now. They broke apart, laughing. Better not keep the boy waiting, Jessie said. Got a new foal to show him anyway. Sugar's little one finally decided to arrive. Hand in hand, they went downstairs to their son. The adoption papers lay on the kitchen table, official and right, declaring what their hearts had known for months. They were family, bound by love and choice, and the kind of grace that gives broken people second chances. Through the window, Evelyn could see the ranch stretching toward the mountains, the land that had brought them together now, witnessing their joy. Sugar and her foal grazed in the spring sunshine, the baby staying close to its mother's side, secure in belonging. Just like Thomas, she thought, watching Jessie scoop their son into his arms. Just like all of them, finding home in each other, building something beautiful from life's unexpected turns. The ring around her neck caught the light, blessing what had been and what would be. In 1 month, she would add her own ring, standing before their community to declare what was already true. Love finds a way. Family is what you build together, and sometimes the longest road home leads straight to where you were meant to be. All along, the family portrait hung above the fireplace, catching golden evening light. Evelyn paused in her party preparations to study it. Taken on their wedding day 1 year ago, it captured everything they'd become. Jessie in his best Western suit, herself in a simple cream dress, and Thomas between them in tiny cowboy boots, yellow blanket clutched in one hand while the other reached for Jessie's hat. Penny for your thoughts? Jessie's arms slipped around, her waist, his chin resting on her shoulder, just thinking about how far we've come. She leaned back against him. Did you ever imagine that first day you drove up our driveway? Our driveway, he repeated softly, like it was always meant to be. Maybe it was, she thought. Maybe some things were written in the stars, or the Montana soil, or the way life sometimes hands you exactly what you need, disguised as what you think you can't handle. Outside, cars were beginning to arrive for their 1-year anniversary celebration. Combined with the ranch's spring festival, the education center had drawn visitors from 3 states now, their sustainable ranching program becoming a model for others. Mama! Papa! Thomas came tearing through the house, his toy horse flying. Behind him, Uncle Tom's here with the cake. Jessie caught their son mid-flight, swinging him up into a familiar hold. At 2.5, Thomas was a perfect blend of his past and present. Jack's blue eyes and fair hair, but Jessie's quiet way with horses and tendency to think before he spoke. Better go help him then, Jessie said, settling Thomas on his hip. Can't let Mary Beth's famous chocolate cake sit in the sun. The ranch was transformed for the celebration. Strings of lights crossed the yard, tables laden with potluck dishes stretched under the old cottonwoods, and everywhere were faces of friends who'd become family. Sarah Bennett arrived with her brother from Bozeman, who now handled all their legal work. The Martinez family brought tamales and 3 generations of ranch hands. Even Margaret Chen came, proudly showing off the article featuring their cooperative in a national farming magazine. Who'd have thought, Tom Wheeler said, helping Jessie set up the dessert table. A year ago, this place was nearly lost. Now look at it. Jesse's eyes found Evelyn across the yard where she was greeting guests. Amazing what can happen when you believe in second chances. The evening unfolded like a well-loved story. Their neighbors' children played tag around the barn while their parents shared news and plans for the coming season. The winter wheat cooperative had expanded to include 10 local ranches now, their combined resources making all of them stronger. As sunset painted the sky in familiar Montana glory, Jesse clinked his glass for attention. Public speaking wasn't his style, but some things needed saying. "A year ago," he began, his voice carrying across the quiet yard, "you all watched Evelyn and I make promises to each other, but the truth is, we'd been making them all along. Promises. To trust, to believe in second chances, to build something that would last." His eyes found hers in the crowd. "Today, we're celebrating more than a wedding anniversary. We're celebrating family, the ones we're born to and the ones we choose. We're celebrating this land that brings us together and the future we're building for our children." Thomas, half asleep in Evelyn's arms, stirred at his father's voice. The yellow blanket that had followed him since birth was soft against her shoulder. "So, thank you," Jesse continued, "for believing in us, in this place, in the power of love to heal and rebuild and create something new from what was broken." Evelyn made her way to his side as applause rippled through the gathering. The setting sun caught Claire's ring where it still hung around her neck, now joined by her wedding band. "Should we tell them?" she whispered as Jesse's arm slipped around her. His smile was answer enough. Turning to their friends and neighbors, Evelyn raised her voice. "Since you're all here, we have some news." Her free hand drifted to her stomach, still flat, but holding their secret. "Come spring, Thomas is going to be a big brother." The cheers that erupted startled a flight of meadowlarks from the nearby fence. Thomas woke fully, looking around with sleepy confusion until Jesse gathered him close, holding both his son and his wife in a gentle embrace. Later, after the guests had gone, and Thomas was asleep in his big boy bed, they stood on the porch in the starlight. The family portrait was visible through the window, but Evelyn was looking at the living proof of their journey, at Jesse's face in the moonlight, lined with joy and purpose. "Happy?" he asked softly. She thought of the baby growing beneath her heart, of Thomas sleeping peaceful upstairs, of the thriving ranch around them. She thought of that desperate widow who'd posted a help-wanted ad and the broken man who'd answered it. Thought of how love grows best in unexpected places, between unexpected people, creating families from the pieces life gives you. "More than happy," she answered, drawing his head down for a kiss. "I'm home." Above them, stars wheeled in ancient patterns over the Montana mountains. The ranch slept quiet and content, winter wheat dreaming of spring, horses gentled by love standing close in their pastures. And in the house that had seen 5 generations of hopes and dreams, a family portrait watched over those who had found each other against all odds, proving that love, like the land itself, endures through all seasons. They were the next chapter in the ranch's long story, but more than that, they were their own story, of healing, of choosing, of building something beautiful from broken pieces. And like all the best stories, theirs would continue, growing richer with each passing season, rooted in the soil of trust and blooming endless as love itself.